December 12th, 2035. We have successfully captured BossEvasion. He is currently tied up in a chair sitting at a table across from me. The prosthetic from his right arm has been removed, replaced with a disciplinary device. Beginning experiment now.
Okay, you guys are a lot smarter than the others. Can't begin to tell you the times where they didn't remove my prosthetic and...
You seem to be particularly fond of this arm.
Well, most people prefer to have a normal amount of limbs.
But this is definitely not a normal limb, Ryoshi. An Illyrium-powered cybernetic arm with a hidden blade in the knuckle panel, with an alternate mode of a plasma launcher. I must say, I am very impressed with the design of this. Would have loved to work with the one responsible. What?
You just called me Ryoshi.
Yes, it is Japanese for hunter.
I know what it means, it's just, unless my internal clock went haywire, I don't believe I've been out that long. Are we still in Africa?
But Sacred Coil wraps around the whole world with its influence.
Is that why you're called Sacred Coil?
Did you have another theory?
I just thought Sacred Coil was all about the worship of DNA since you all work with Darlington.
Darlington is a valued target for our order. With his help, we'll return this world to the Elder's rule and...
Because he's always been about how we're all just chemicals. You only ever fell in love because your chemicals are telling you to.
Finally, you've brought up the subject of our experiment.
What's it now?
I have brought you here with the explicit goal of testing out the next stage of Sacred Coil's bid for Advent's reunification.
Alright, I'll bite. What are you wanting me to do? Like Leaves from a Cherry Blossom by Riku Mal. Your name's Riku?
Yes. Now keep reading.
This better be just some kind of logic.
Keep reading.
It had been a month since the Elders were defeated, and to their disappointment, Earth didn't crumble to dust after their departure. While some areas of the world were still fought over by remnants of Advent and XCOM, others began the long process of reconstruction. But in Tokyo, there was a celebration. Something that the commander of XCOM felt Boss needed after a month of fighting remnant and dissident forces. And as he watched from the rooftops at all the fireworks and sparklers dancing in the night, perhaps he was right. I descended down onto the... Wait, hold on.
What?
Why the hell did it suddenly shift from a third-person perspective to a first-person one? How long is this thing supposed to be?
It is 5 pages containing 2,364 words.
Yeah, I get it. So it's a short story. I can handle a short story like this. I descended onto the streets, watching as members of the Resistance embraced their loved ones after returning from some skirmishes in the Battle of Sapporo, uniting Japan. It felt foreign, seeing a soldier hug his lover, like its secret finale to a show that you knew was canceled after its first season. But I quickly ignored it to analyze the reconstruction efforts, watching as workers tore down signs and statues of Advent propaganda with a fervor that still hasn't toned down a month after the organization was exposed for its processing of humans through their gene therapy clinics. Sapporo was captured 2 months ago, and Japan still isn't united, as Hokkaido still has Advent remnant forces.
This is a fictitious piece. It also stated that you were taking a vacation, which you have only ever done when you were critically wounded.
Even then, they would just hand me the remote controller of a Spark and send it on missions. Scorch always insisted on never being deployed with one. Guess he's still afraid of friendly fire.
Anyway, I think the next paragraph will be a lot more appealing to you.
Alright then. It was the next place I visited. There were multiple in a city this big, but they all shared the same traits. Ransacked, abandoned, and hundreds of effigies dedicated to lost loved ones sent there and never returned. The crowd surrounding it now was massive, 40 or so mourners paying their respects and comforting one another. I stood on the edge of it, watching, clapping my hands together and silently praying to no one in particular.
Was I correct in my assumption?
Yes, actually. I thought you remnant guys loved soaking in that propaganda without a shred of intuition.
Oh, don't get me wrong. The gene therapy clinics were certainly nefarious little facilities. But we at Sacred Coil believed them and the Elders' regime to be a necessary evil for culling and purifying the more barbarous aspects of humanity.
You honestly believe that?
Read the next paragraph and find out.
His prayer was silently interrupted by a shrill, almost mechanical voice calling for help. A hybrid was being dragged into an alleyway by some toughs. He quickly pursued. Such grudges were unsurprising. They were as aimless as they were numerous. It would normally be a matter of calling the local peacekeepers, but he was in a civilian gear and had no headset for which to radio them in. So with nothing except his prosthetic right arm, he confronted the toughs currently kicking in on the hybrid, their yellow blood spraying out of his mouth like squibs.
Will you try to correct me again? Say that this sort of thing never happens anymore?
People will always look for the quickest means of satisfaction.
Like beating up some helpless hybrid to make up for 20 years of peace that Advent provided?
That wasn't peace.
Right, because you humans only ever care about your freedoms, oblivious to the strife that the Elders have sought to relieve both your people and theirs.
Oh, bullshit! The Elders only wanted to sustain them.
Continue.
What do you think you're doing? Boss asked in a raised but controlled voice. One of the toughs, a scrawny kid with several sectoid skulls spilling out from the back of his black tank top, looked at him confusedly. We're just watching out for our community. This, he emphasized his next word with a kick towards the hybrid's ribs. A crack was heard as they wailed in agony. Freak! Was going to disrupt our poor neighbors grieving at the clinic. His two compatriots nodded in agreement, but kept their distance, both separately eyeing Boss's right arm. Boss retorted, I didn't see them make any hostile actions towards anyone. A half-truth, he hadn't noticed the hybrid until they screamed for help, an action that had no effect on the rest of the mourners. He hoped that it was because they mistook his screams for wails of anguish like many of the other mourners. But he knew better. I'll give you one chance. Walk away, and we'll all pretend that this never happened. The two toughs stared at their leader, sweat already caking their faces in fear of what the alternative might be. Their leader shrugged, as if accepting the offer, before raising his foot to stomp on the hybrid's head. You've ridden me to be a lot more heroic than I was expecting.
Despite your reputation as the alien hunter, I've learned that you are far more open-minded than I ever gave any of you at XCOM credit.
XCOM is known for being adaptable.
So you say. But aside from your own commander, you're the only one that seems to embody that trait.
I mean, you don't necessarily need good aim to throw a grenade.
Indeed. Please continue.
Only for the foot to stop 6 inches away from the hybrid's face. The kid was spooked, so it obviously wasn't his intention to stop, which only became more apparent when he was flung off said foot and sent spinning. The two toughs raised their fists in surprise, only for a force to grab both of them by their heads and slam them together. Instinctively, I rushed to the kid as he was recovering, placing him in a headlock, and started counting down in my head, making sure the last thing he heard before I made it to 6 was, "Never pull this shit again," and felt his body slip into unconsciousness. I look over to the hybrid, now on their hands and knees, bowing to the tall figure that had just uncloaked herself. Oh no. Had I known you survived, I would have never surrendered myself to XCOM. My lady, please forgive my disloyalty. The hybrid begged feverishly as the figure raised her hands in protest. Please stop. There's no need to. Assassin? I interrupted her. She turned to face me. A ragged cloak covered her figure, and a hood shadowed her face. Her eyes were shockingly barely visible, with no evidence of psionic energy flowing through her. We shared this pause for only a moment before I asked, "How are you alive?" she immediately disappeared. I've grown accustomed to the shimmer of her cloak and followed it as she scaled up the alley and out of my sight, leaving me in a state of confusion and nostalgia. Oh God, no!
Do you have an issue?
Several! Most of them in your writing style, but the biggest one being your abject disregard for reality. The assassin is dead!
By your hand, conveniently, whereas the rest of your comrades were unconscious. The curious thing, isn't it?
No, it's not! You're insulting the blood, sweat, and bodies that was given to ensure that that bitch was put into the ground for...
Do the smart thing, boss, and use that energy to read on.
Boss snapped himself into focus, turned to the unconscious kid, and procured his phone. With it, he called for the peacekeepers, and was met with 2 skirmishers, one in red and one in blue. The red one started. Hey boss, thought the commander put you on shore leave. They did, but I noticed these punks were harassing this hybrid and wanted to help. Boss said, seeing the hybrid still on their hands and knees, asking for forgiveness to a person that wasn't there anymore. Poor thing. She definitely didn't deserve this, the blue one commented. You know her? Boss asked. The blue one nodded and continued. Her name's Nashi. She was a stun lancer stationed in France. When the tower came down, she went through major combat drug withdrawal and stopped eating for a week. She was transferred over here to Japan to avoid any prosecution due to their background. The blue one placed a hand on Nashi's shoulder, rubbing it to help her calm down. The red one chimed in. We'll take care of things from here. You're on vacation, boss. Go and enjoy it. Boss nodded and headed off, fully aware of the shimmer of the assassin that still lingers on the rooftops. Are you fucking kidding me? The hybrid. You named her Nachi.
Yes, it is Japanese for...
No, yes, I know. Very subtle on your part. Whatever. It only took a light stroll to reach the apartment that boss was staying in. A 2-story complex run by an elderly woman, an associate he had known since the aftermath of the first invasion. She didn't charge him, thankfully, and would gladly cook him dinner every night during his vacation. He made sure to stop by her apartment specifically, and asked for 2 bento boxes. He attempted to excuse it as wanting to eat plentifully, but she caught his scheme and suspected that he brought a girl home. She wasn't wrong. How do you know about her?
I was wondering when you would notice. Despite my equipment, I wasn't really part of the combat when serving Advent. I was called an exterior investigator. For every resistance leader or troublesome political figure, it was my job to perform a background check on them. But that changed when XCOM fully resurfaced after your commander returned. Then my goal was to learn where the hell you operatives were coming from, and to provide that information to the Chosen. Have you ever wondered why they were so easily able to extract information from your minds?
I chalked it up to super psionics.
That part is true, but it's far easier to infiltrate a mind when you know something about them. A bit of background can be like a key that opens the floodgates to all that juicy intel. So, that was my job for a while. But then the assassin asked for something personal from me.
Oh, son of a bitch.
She wanted to know all that she could about her little Ryoshi.
Fuck. She also called me Ryoshi?
On occasion. I'm certain you know that she prefers to call you boss.
Right, so let's finish this little fanfic of yours then. I held the 2 bento boxes on top of one another as I opened the door to my apartment. There's 2 sections to my apartment. The entrance room with my sink and electric grill, and the bathroom across from it. Opening the door to my main apartment, there is the living room. If you turn to your left, you see a ladder that would lead up to my bed. It was nice, compact, and its patio door was wide open. I walked over to the table between the TV and the couch, placed both bento boxes down, and sat on my knees and waited. It only took 15 seconds for her stomach to be heard growling, the lid of the bento rising off the box, and for the assassin to turn off her cloak. The cover of night did well to hide her disheveled form, but under the light of my living room, I saw all the grime and crust that covered her. I suspected she would be worse for wear, but I hadn't expected this. Her eyes looked even dimmer. She didn't bother with the chopsticks, and and she grabbed clumps of rice and fried shrimp from the box and gulped them down. It was clear she was starving. With her attention on the bento, Boss decided to continue his interrogation. He said, "How are you alive?" She paused mid-swallow, cheeks puffed with food, and stared. If he hadn't known better, he swore he could see her blushing. She had difficulty swallowing her mouthful. She never bothered to remove the tails of her shrimp, but with a cartoonish crunch she succeeded. She started, but she stopped suddenly, her breath rapidly as she began to sweat. She started to hyperventilate, making sure her tongue didn't touch her mouth. He was dumbstruck at what was happening, only to look at her bento box and see that her wasabi was gone. Well, she did always have a weakness to fire. Ow! Moving on. He exceedingly ran to the door, her hand outreached in fear of him abandoning her, only to find relief in his return, a gallon of milk in hand. He uncapped the lid and froze, seeing her on her hands and knees, mouth agape and tongue waggling. It left him with only one thought. She was expecting to drink straight from the jug. Determined to keep his milk from being contaminated, he attempted to pour it into her mouth. But it was difficult considering that even kneeling, she came close to Boss's height. With the jug above his head, he poured. Relief immediately swept across her face as the wasabi was washed from her mouth. However, Boss made the mistake of holding it over his head and spilled it over both of them. They both stood still, covered in milk, with past interactions and grievances all but forgotten. What the fuck is this?
What do you mean?
I mean, what kind of fetishes are you trying to evoke here, you sick fuck?
Fetishes? I don't know what you mean.
I have never read something that fetishized milk in such a strange manner.
We'll definitely need to edit that part out. Continue.
Motherfucker! Fine, weirdo. You should get those clothes off. Fuck you, asshole! I instinctively said, ignorant of the implications. Her face lit up worse than when she consumed the wasabi, and I realized. I mean, ouch. Killjoy. You should go take a shower and I'll clean out the mess, I corrected myself. She nodded, took off her cloak that covered her figure, and then proceeded to the bathroom. Her armor was the same as when I last encountered her, but it was damaged beyond any protection aside from her cloaking tech. It was decorated with dried yellow blood all across her body, especially on her stomach, right where I saw her own knife go into. I picked up the cloak and grabbed a rack to clean up the milk, until an unfortunate thought entered my head. She had nothing to wear. Then, as if through clairvoyance, the doorbell rang. I went to the door, trying to avoid the skin-tight suit that she left at the bathroom door, and opened it. It was 2 kimono robes, one in blue and the other in pink, with a small note on top that reads, "The shrine should be unattended tonight," with a heart at the end. A downside to having a landlord that treats you like a grandchild. When she was done, I shielded my eyes from her as I made my way to the bathroom, trying to be as gentlemanly as possible. My shower was quicker than hers, which shouldn't be surprising since that was probably the first shower she had in a month. I left the bathroom and headed to my closet, when I noticed she was back to sitting on my couch, staring at the robes that I placed there habitually. Because of her height, she had to wear 2 towels, one to cover her top and the other to cover her bottom. She then noticed me. Her cheeks were still red from my fumbled words earlier. I answered her silent question. My landlord dropped these off. I guess she wanted me to attend the celebrations in more traditional clothing. It's probably too small for you, so I'll just find... I was cut off guard as the assassin dropped both towels from her body, her blue skin still glistening from the shower earlier, and the elders did wonders for her.
You have to admit, she had a fantastic
After
figure.
some improvements and cheats, we both quietly walked out of the apartment. Her kimono would fit a girl around Boss's height, but she hovered over him by 2 feet, so the robe stopped at her elbows and knees. To compensate for this, Boss used medical bandages to wrap her arms and legs to help hide her identity. A process that left Boss flustered as he pulls her arm and guides her towards the shrine. Though she wasn't any better, as her silence had continued ever since Boss first asked her for her survival. Her mind raced as she tried to figure out how this happened. Where once Boss never hesitated to try and kill her, still don't. Now he gently grips her hand and takes her to a secluded place for who knows what. It pumped her heart better than spicy food or the devotion to the elders could. Ha! They arrived at the shrine, a small place in Camarocho surrounded by brilliant cherry blossoms, and Boss immediately put his hands together and prayed. After he was done, he saw that the assassin was doing the same, only a lot longer. He didn't ponder what she was praying about, that would be rude, and he didn't want the same question hurled back at him. She finished, and the two stared at each other. To my surprise, it almost seemed like her eyes were getting a bit of light again. The moment was broken by the sound of fireworks decorating the black sky above them, in hues of blues and pinks. What was most surprising, though, was that the shock of the explosion caused the blossoms to shake. In one magical moment, we were surrounded by a typhoon of petals that slowly fell, giving us an aura of divine romance. I grabbed her chin, leveled her head to my own, and pressed my forehead to hers. After a second of sharing our heat, I locked eyes with her and kissed her deeply. In that enigma of romance and love, I came to a moment of clarity. That despite the turmoils of war, we were together again, as if we had always been. Reunited here like leaves falling from the cherry blossoms.
So what do you think?
The assassin is dead.
Pardon?
She's dead. She committed seppuku in front of her broken sarcophagus, and I was the one that chopped her head off, which is more respect than she honestly deserves.
No. You lie. She's alive. I'm certain of it. She survived West, and judging by your reaction to my little piece, it's true.
You're completely delusional. Wait, was this dumbass fanfic just a ploy to gauge my reaction? To see if your precious assassin was actually alive?
No.
You know the funniest part about this? If the assassin were alive, which she isn't, I'm certain she would have committed seppuku after reading this flaccid fart of a short story. Holy shit. Victor? Hello, boss. Been a bit since you disappeared. How long? About half a day. Half a day? Yes. Seems these Sacred Coil types wanted to interrogate you immediately. Didn't even bother to leave the city. They just stuffed you in the back of a convenience store and started wailing on you. Seriously? A convenience store? Honestly, I shouldn't be surprised. He seemed eager for someone to read his chicken scratchings. Like leaves from a cherry. Well, it did sound very gaudy even from the title. You have no idea. It's as pretentious as it was poorly written. At first I thought he was genuinely trying to torture me with it. But no, he was trying to gauge my reaction to see if the assassin was still alive. Don't we still have hers and the other Chosen's heads on display in the Avenger? Well, yeah, we aren't exactly taxidermists. Surprised Nexus didn't make his bed in that trophy room. Ugh. Oh my god. Is this a genuine type recorder? Yeah. Guess they don't make those in your time. Not really. And if they were, Comstar would definitely throw all their resources to acquire it. Ooh? Don't worry about it. Should I just destroy it like you did to that little fanfic? No. We'll take it back to base and analyze it. You see if we can't learn more about Sacred Coil from it. That would most certainly involve handing the tape over to Julian. Are you sure you can trust him with such an humiliating encounter for you? I see. So long as we keep him disconnected from the internet, we should be just fine.